Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to Boxing Unwrapped. It's Boxing Unwrapped, speaking the truth like Barry Hearn in an interview. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew.
And this week, guys, we've got an amazing deep dive for you off the back of Amir Khan's fight versus Terrance Crawford that ended with a bit of confusion. So, Andy, do you want to tell the people what we've got in store for them?
I do. So this episode we're going to look at what the F are the lesser known rules of boxing. As you said, there was obviously a little bit of confusion about the Khan scenario versus Crawford, and there's plenty more where that came from in terms of rules. It's kind of like boxing's gone pub quiz this episode, haven't we, Ryan? So
yeah, totally.
Some absolute like pearlers for you to shake your knowledge, stick at your friends about. And we'll go through some of the more obscure ones and some of the stories where they've come into play as well.
So, let's jump right into what the F are the lesser known rules of boxing.
Where should we start? Should we start?
It's a tough one, right? So, I don't know. Let's maybe start out with the one that ended the Terrance Crawford Amir Khan fight, which is this low blow rule, which kind of seems to cross all of the governing bodies. Because the funny thing about this is each of the governing bodies and sanctioning bodies and boards of control, they all have their own rules of boxing, and most of it is the same, but they have these little nuanced rules. But the low blow rule is one that seems to kind of cross all boundaries. And so there are kind of variants where it's unintentional and intentional low blows. And the general rule is if there is a low blow, the person who gets struck with a low blow gets up to 5 minutes to recover.
Now, this is for accidental low blows.
For accidental low blows, yeah. Where if they cannot continue, the ref can make a decision to say, all right, that's it, you can't continue, and it's a technical knockout. Which we saw in the Khan fight where Amir Khan just didn't even take the 5 minutes. And it seemed that he did not know this rule existed, because when he was interviewed by the BBC, he was like, wait, I had 5 minutes? I wish I'd known that.
But I'm sure the referee was telling him during the period. He's saying like, you've got 5 minutes, or if he's not, then there's all sorts of problems. But I mean, I find it staggering that he wouldn't know. Well, it's Amir Khan,
I don't, because he's Amir Khan, isn't he?
He's Amir Khan. We should do this pub quiz with Amir Khan and see how many he gets right.
None. He'd get absolutely none, because he's absolutely thick as pig shit.
One of Britain's boxing treasures. Right. So anyway, so it's 5. So the rule is that you get, if it's accidental, up to 5 minutes of recovery time. So in the specific instance of the Khan fight, he could have said, I want to use all of the 5 minutes. Tell me when my 5 minutes is up, and then I'll make a decision about whether or not I feel able to continue. But he didn't do any of that nonsense. He just quit.
He just quit.
But
interestingly enough, if it is a intentional low blow, they do give them time to recover, but they can obviously call the fight off, and then obviously the other person gets the blower gets disqualified as opposed to the blowee.
The blower, yeah. So I saw this, yeah. And to be honest, I can't remember if I knew this fully, but the other point about if you are fouled and that causes an injury, if you're intentionally fouled and it causes an injury, but the bout is to continue, then the fouler is deducted not 1 but 2 points. I'm trying to think when I've seen that. I don't know if I have. Like an example of it.
I know when it happened.
Go on.
Holyfield versus Tyson.
Was that a 2-point deduction?
The bite was a 2-point deduction for the first bite.
Right.
Because remember, he bit him twice.
Yes. So yeah, okay, and obviously he was able to. I mean, he was able to continue because it's not. It was just a bit of his non-functioning part of his ear that was removed. But probably that's a bit of a disservice. It probably serves some function. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. It's probably not like an appendix. It's like his actual ear. Anyway.
Now, I think one that is probably a little bit more well-known, but still slightly obscure, is when there are something like an accidental head clash, for instance, that stops one of the participants or both of the participants from continuing. And it kind of depends on when it happens within the fight, what happens next. And it can make 4 rounds very important. So if it is before the end of the 4th round, it is called a technical draw. And there's a draw. If it's after the 4th round, it goes to the cards. And whoever is up on the cards wins, but then it's a technical decision.
If there's an unintentional foul, i.e. like a clash of heads that leads to someone being cut, etc., if it's before the end of the 4th round, the fight has to be stopped. It's a no contest. If it's after the end of the 4th round, then the decision, then the outcome of the fight when it's stopped will either be a technical decision in favour of one of the fighters or a technical draw if it's level on the scorecards. But technical draws also occur when a bout has not completed a certain number of rounds, usually 4, which makes it not an official fight. Most states have eliminated the technical draw decision for bouts that do not go the required distance and have replaced it with no contest.
Right.
So it's clear the same thing. Well, that's kind of saying a technical draw is the same thing as a no contest. So I don't think you weren't wrong in what you were saying if it's less than 4 according to that. But it's kind of confused. Yeah, okay. So some places it's saying used to call it under 4 rounds a technical draw, but now most people call that a no contest. And if it goes to the scorecards because it stopped after 4. It's either a technical draw if it's equal or a technical decision if it's to one or the other fighter. So it's saying less than 4 is a no contest, and then if it's after 4 rounds, it's either a technical decision in favour of one of the fighters or a technical draw.
Right. Okay.
So it's slightly, but I mean, it's not clear because it's saying that some places still call. If it stopped within the first 4 rounds, they would then call that a technical draw rather than calling it a no contest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But the kind of bottom line is the fight is called off before 4 rounds, where after the 4 rounds it goes into the cards.
Yes.
So it becomes a draw or a technical decision based on whether or not it's gone into the 5th round.
If it goes into the 5th round, then you have an outcome rather than rather than there being no outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I think is something that, I mean, you do see so many head clashes that end up with absolute piles of fucking blood. And, it's like, if you have passed that 4th round, it's like, fuck, we need to get the fucking cut man on this so that actually we can close it up. And it's a real shame for the person who comes off worse for it, because actually it can be incredibly debilitating, having all the blood piss into your eye. And actually it's not necessarily your fault. It's not that you have done anything wrong. You've just been smacked in the head with a fucking head.
Do you remember the Badu Jack Marcus Brown fight? And Badu Jack, he was way behind on the card, so it's not like he could go, I can't continue, because he knew he'd lose then, so he has to continue. But through a head clash, he has this enormous splitting gash running the entire length of his forehead.
Yeah.
so you get in situations like that if you know you're behind on the cards where you kind of have to carry on. You can't flag it to say, oh, I need to stop, because you'd lose anyway. I was going to say, one of the things that I thought of that actually would be quite useful in terms of technology is, like, after a round, you could use the video replays to get confirmation whether or not, like, a cut was opened by a punch or a head clash, because referees sometimes get that wrong. And I think that would actually be like a really nice introduction of technology to boxing, because you could confirm it in the first break after that round, and then say to both, you could make sure everyone's aware, boxers included, that is being ruled as a cut opened by a punch or as an accidental head clash, so that that's right and they all know and it's the correct decision. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes the refs get it wrong.
Andy, what a beautiful segue to something that I found within the WBC rules for championship fights.
Go on.
Right? I found something called the WBC Instant Replay Guidelines.
I swear we've not pre-planned. We don't do enough work to have pre-plans.
we don't, like, right? So, the WBC will appoint a panel in charge of instant replay. The panel will consist of a WBC supervisor, the local commission supervisor, and the specifically appointed monitor supervisor. Okay? The promoter, with the support of the television network, will provide a monitor to be placed in the head table of the commission with headphones for audio commentary to receive the live feed. The instant replay is limited to review A, whether a cut or other injury to the face is the result of a punch or otherwise. B, whether a punch is thrown after the bell signaling the end of a round. Or C, in any major situation that can change the outcome of the bout and where the replay clearly shows the actions are contradictory to the live ruling of the referee. The referee may call timeout during the bout and consult with the instant replay panel if in doubt to any scenario.
So the referee's got to ask for help.
No, he can. But
But I mean, they won't correct the referee unless he asks for their opinion. Is my point.
Yes, right? But the instant replay panel will review any controversial instance that may have occurred in any round. Mm-hmm. A determination of the referee may be overruled solely if the instant replay monitor clearly and conclusively reveals, according to each member of the panel, that the ruling of the action of the referee was mistaken in his original determination. So if he doesn't pick up on it being a head clash, for instance,
then they can.
Yeah.
Well, so there surely must be examples when this has been utilised. I can't ever think of any, but I mean, obviously I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge, but that's so interesting.
I know, right? When this exists,
yeah,
it's mad. But like, I only found it within the WBC's rules. I didn't find it within, unless it's like an unwritten thing, or it's something that's like crosses over, or like it depends on other like commissions or whatever. But it does exist within the WBC's rules.
That's so interesting.
I know, right?
I would love someone to tell us when it's been utilised, if they've got any examples of it being utilised.
Yeah, because actually, and what I find very interesting about this, by the way, is if we can use technology in boxing, why are we not doing it more?
I agree. That's why I was saying, like, it could be a good kind of introduction, because as far as I was aware, that no one used any. There was no technology being used in terms of actually officiating or scoring.
Yeah,
that's really, really interesting. Great find, Ryan. Great find.
I know.
On form this week.
I know, right? The shit that I find, like, digging through the fucking rules, like, you know, because I looked through, because there are variations depending on who you're looking at, and this was within the WBC's rules.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I know, right? Mental. Absolutely mental. Moving on, we could probably talk a little bit about something that I found. I found some really funny shit, actually, in the rules of the British Boxing Board of Control.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. So, it's actually in the rules that when officiating in the boxing ring, the referee shall wear a clean white shirt, a black bow tie, dark trousers, black shoes, or boxing pumps. Now, he may wear a jacket or a tracksuit top when officiating at outdoor performances.
Oh, bless him.
I know. So, it's not just done for tradition. This is like, in British boxing matches, this is 100% the rules. Which, I mean, white? Come on. The stains.
That's done for effect. I know, it's just like a Daz advert in the making, is it?
Totally. Absolutely.
Does it specifies a bow tie?
It specifies a black bow tie.
Now, does it say whether you can have a clip-on one or whether it's got to be one that you've tied yourself?
No, it does not specify. So you can go either or depending on what you want. But I would imagine the problem with one that you tie yourself would mean, the risk of it becoming untied during the contest.
It's a risk. I mean, it's
and you end up looking like Frank Sinatra after a few martinis.
You gotta call a halt to the fight because you've got to retie your bow tie.
Yeah. But they've got other things, right, that I find quite remarkable, right? So
Go on.
The officials in charge of British Boxing Board of Control fights, i.e. the referee, shall ensure that the boxers have a clean and smart appearance and that all wearing apparel and towels are clean when entering the ring.
It's very pedantic.
It's quite pedantic, isn't it? Like, how do you say they're both clean and smart?
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
I know. It's a bit ridiculous. Like, what's the criteria? What if if one of them's got like a minging towel and BO? You're like, you can't fight.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, no chance there, bud.
Go and have a quick shower and come back.
I know. It's like, it seems a bit archaic actually, because do you think the natural idea would be, oh, well, clean and smart, maybe you have to be shaved, but you don't have to be shaved. You can have a nice big beard, like my boy Richard Larty.
We can talk about him later. He had quite the beard.
He had quite the beard, yeah. So, I found that quite an interesting kind of quirk of, because it's not mentioned in any of the other rules that I saw, only the British Board of Control ones.
Why is it not surprising that they have the most kind of archaic and kind of pointless? Yeah. It's surprising.
It is surprising. And also, one that's quite interesting about them is that if it's not a Commonwealth or British title fight, the ref does the scoring. Mm-hmm. Which is another quirk. You don't have any outside judges. You just have the ref determining.
Yeah, and that's produced over the years. That's produced some pretty funky results. Although it's not like judges scoring has not, but yeah, it has produced some pretty interesting outcomes over the years.
Yeah,
there's a
Go ahead.
a couple of ones that are quite people will know, but just to bring a little bit more clarity on them. So you might see sometimes, especially I think on the American TV coverage, they tend to bring up a screen and it'll have a couple of rule snippets before, and they say these are the rules specific to the fight. So one of the things is that you'll see sometimes, depending on the level, is that you'll see people get standing 8 counts. I.e., when a fighter's hurt but not knocked down, then the referee will do he will give the person an 8 count to recover. But you get that in amateur fights as well, but you won't see it in championship bouts. So in bouts where one of the belts is on the line, you don't get standing 8 counts. So that's why, if you're wondering why if you're ever wondering why you see it in some fights but not the others, then that's why you get that. By the same token, in championship fights, it'll often say that the 3 knockdown rule is not in effect, and that means that if you get knocked down, you can get knocked down as many times as can happen in a round. As long as you get up, the fight won't be called off. Whereas if the 3 knockdown rule is in effect, then if you get knocked down 3 times within a round, ciao, then you're done. Although, to be honest, if you're getting knocked down 3 times within a round, probably either way you're not going to be great.
No, not at all.
You're probably looking at something of an underdog. Another one you see is that they talk about a lot is about you can't be saved by the bell, which means you've still got to beat the count even if the timer for the end of the round has gone. You've still got to beat the count, or else you're done, son. You can't be saved by the bell.
Which I think is actually quite funny, to be honest, because like that saying, "saved by the bell," is almost completely fucking redundant.
What do you mean?
Well, because you can't be saved by the bell.
I see what you mean, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, where does that saying come from? Answers on a postcard, please. To boxingunwrapped@gmail.com.
But that's where it'll come from, though, isn't it? I mean, that's the origin of the saying. It's just it's kind of one where it's been adopted into the kind of common like lexicon where it was really obscure to start with, and it isn't really applicable.
Yes,
it's strange.
Yeah, it's strange. So what else can we talk about? So now you know how we talk a lot about why don't they remove titles from badly behaving boxers? Well, guess what the WBO has in its rules?
Something about
a list of prohibited conduct, right? So if you're a champion, you can have your title stripped for the following.
Go on.
Number 1, domestic violence. Number 2,
13 empty vacant titles pretty soon then.
Right? Number 2, sexual assault.
Oh, come on, give the boxers a chance.
Number 3,
honestly. You're not even giving them a chance. Don't say drugs.
Child abuse.
That's less common.
Use of illegal drugs and or performance enhancing drugs. Criminal conduct. And any other conduct deemed by the World Boxing Organization contrary to the fundamental principles of the organization.
That's very interesting.
I mean, like, I don't even think that they know their own rules, to be honest.
Enforce them.
Absolutely not. Because they exist in the rules, but no one seems to be enforcing them.
Which is worse than them not existing, isn't it?
Exactly. It's like, did we not put something in about domestic violence not doing it? Yeah, don't worry about it. No one reads the rules. Except for like really obscure Scottish podcasts.
If only we were more mainstream, we'd be cleaning it up one by one. We've talked about like how the problem is because people have such individual kind of like draws, and because of the positions champions find themselves in, that they get away with an awful lot. But like we're saying, there's no point in having the rules and then, having no adherence to them. It's just like, if it's like flagrant rule breaking, like, well, let's ask the question, have they ever stripped someone because of domestic violence or because of child abuse or because of criminal activity? That would be good to see. So how many occasions it happened versus how many times have they stripped someone, if you see what I mean? How many champions have they got? Yeah,
exactly. And the other one that I wanted us to talk about a little bit, because I think this is quite interesting, is with the WBA, right? If a boxer is more than 5% overweight 5 days before a fight, he should not be allowed to dehydrate himself and should not be permitted to fight. If he presents signs of dehydration or excessive weight loss on the day of the fight, he should not be permitted to fight.
Now, I have seen. I think it was in the build-up to the fight this weekend. I saw some pictures where it was them showing their weights like a week or two beforehand, and I don't know if it was for the purposes of this, if it was because of the. I don't know if it was to adhere to the WBA one or not. That they're. I'm not sure, but like, so I knew there was something about that, but I didn't know the specifics, to be honest. But again, how much is it? So they do a weigh-in effectively, what, a week out, you're saying?
Yeah, a week out, they weigh them to see how close they are to making weight.
5% of their body weight.
5% of their body weight, which actually is not that much.
They need to be...
If we're talking about, like, Canelo consistently, like, dehydrates by, what, like 10%?
Yeah,
something?
but then if you think about it, so if he can only be 5% over, so the limit for middle is 160, so he could be 168 a week out, and then spend the next week to crash down to 160 by that point, and then blow back up to like 180. So it's doable, isn't it? I don't know. We need to speak to an expert, but I mean,
we do.
It seems like it's still like a weight division. You can still be a weight division over a week out, and that you could be dehydrated to make that weight a week out. Do you see what I mean? It's Russian dolls here, because you can be like, well, I could be dehydrated to make that one, and then be dehydrated to make the week after.
I know, it's really odd. But like, how much do they enforce it?
I don't know. You're assuming you would assume for something like that they would have to do the weigh-ins. But like I was saying, you could be dehydrated for that, surely, to meet it. I don't know. I struggle to understand why they can't all have the same as the IBF, where they have to weigh in the morning of the fight, or even closer. Make them weigh in a few hours before. Make cheating the weight by dehydrating so debilitating that no one wants to do it. Do you know what I mean? Do it like that. So basically, but I know the risk would then be that fights get cancelled and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think it should be. It shouldn't be a thing in boxing. It should just not be a thing that you can dehydrate, because it's just it's creating extra health risks. Yeah,
and like the thing is as well, right? Is like there's one thing that I noticed. That the governing bodies have different limits between the time between the fight and the weigh-in. So it ranges from like 48 hours to 16 hours before the fight.
Oh, really?
And like, and also like this rule where it's like, oh, if you're overweight at the weigh-in, then you have like 2 hours to make the weight. What the fuck do they think they're doing in that 2 hours? Taking a big shit?
Yeah, I wondered about that, right? No, see, this is a semi-serious point, but like, do boxers, are they like, to make weight, do they consider like some form of irrigation, like colonic irrigation or something? Like, surely... Surely you normally have some stuff in there that, like, at a push could be totally extracted. That obviously must weigh something.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I like, you do hear like all this stuff about the amount of like actual fecal matter in your colon that you like just like walk around with.
Well, surely it would be. That's a very good thing to lose, rather than losing anything else. If you can just like vacuum out all the poop. Do you think like I should start a business where I like go around and like offer fecal removal services to boxers to make weight easier? Are you struggling to make weight? Have you considered colonic irrigation? I promise my colonic irrigation will mean you will lose 7 pounds in only a few hours. You could give it a try. It's quite niche. But could work.
It could work, actually. I think it's maybe a good option. So maybe a nice little learner.
Should we move on?
Right. So yeah, let's move on. What other things can we talk about?
I've got one. I wanted to talk about this. I think a lot of people probably know this rule, but I'd like to again put the question out there to our esteemed audience to ask them. You know, as it sometimes happens, typically in rather brutal fashion, occasionally boxers will get knocked physically out of the ring.
Yes.
When they get knocked down, they'll actually get knocked down and out of the ring. Quite famously, Bernard Hopkins in his last ever fight got knocked out of the ring. It tends to be like the most spectacular of knockouts. You know, they kind of like splay so badly backwards that their head ends up kind of like lolling and their back kind of bending nicely over the rope before they kind of collapse in a heap on the tables.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. So, but in those instances, they get not 10 but 20 seconds to recover and get back onto their feet in the ring. What I was curious to know is, because I did some research and I can't find any, I'd like to find an example of someone getting knocked out of the ring and then recovering, getting back in the ring and then going on to win the fight. Ideally, someone doing so in longer than 10 but less than 20 seconds to make this rule relevant. That's what I would like to know, if there's any occasions of it ever happening in boxing, ever. Because I can't find any profile one.
Yes, good point, actually.
Because otherwise, like, why did they come up with the rule? Be like, someone's gone, oh, do you know what? Probably give them an extra 10 seconds if they're out of the ring, so they can climb the stairs.
Well, because the thing is, it might, like, what if, like, it takes you longer to get in the ring than 10 seconds? Because, like, you'd have to rush. I mean, it's a good point.
But, like, every time, if you look,
it.
basically, if someone's been knocked out of the ring, they're basically almost always, like, spark out. They're not going to be... You could give them 5 minutes, normally, and they wouldn't get back in the ring. So I'm curious to know the origin of the rule and if there's ever any occasions where it's happened. But it got me thinking.
Unless they slipped. Like, unless they slipped, I don't know, and fell out?
Maybe. But then you think, well, if they slipped, would they be able to get back in 10? Don't want to make them rush.
Don't make them.
You know when, like, footballers get fouled and then they proceed to, like, do, like, loads and loads of rolls and they cover, like, 10 yards rolling on their back on the ground, like, writhing in agony?
Yes.
Well, I wondered,
like they've been shot.
If you're a boxer, if you get, like, knocked down, just, like, roll gently out of the ring, and then you get an extra 10 seconds, and then you can just take an extra 10 seconds to just pop back upstairs and hop back in.
Like, whoops, sorry, fell out the ring again.
Yeah, don't take a knee. Just hop over the top rope, and you get an extra 10 seconds. You don't get 10, you get 20.
Perfect.
Why not? Just step out of the ring. Because, like, you're going to get, like, it's a 10-8 round anyway. So, like, you know, get your extra 10 cents. Could be the difference. We could be seeing it a lot more. Now we've put it out in the open.
Well, you're changing the game, Andy.
They're going to have to change the rule to make it that you can't do it deliberately. They have to refer it to the video panel to make sure you didn't deliberately, to stop people just, like, hopping in and out the entire fight.
The video panel that absolutely no one knows about until now.
Exactly.
Right, well, should we talk just slightly about glove weights?
Yes, let's do it. Let's have a quick chat about glove weights.
Because depending on your size, the weight of glove that you use has to change. So whether or not you can use 12-ounce gloves, or you use 10-ounce gloves, or you use 8-ounce gloves, it all depends on, you know, really. Some of it will be agreed beforehand, so, you know, within the kind of contracts where they're not using it. Most heavier divisions use 10-ounce gloves, but welterweight and lower can use 8-ounce gloves, because actually, like, they're little. They're only little. They're only little. And actually, like, there are also approved gloves that you can use. So, like, you can't just wear any type of boxing glove. there are certain gloves that you can and cannot wear because of the stuffing and what have you that's inside of it.
Mm-hmm. Got to make sure that shit's legit.
Too legit to quit.
Too legit to quit. Yeah. And obviously they use bigger gloves for sparring, and bigger sized amateurs use, I think, 12-ounce gloves.
Yeah.
MMA use 4-ounce gloves. Sorry, Ryan. Not that maybe.
Oh yeah, they do use. And do you know why they use 4-ounce gloves?
Because none of them know how to punch properly.
Well, it's actually they like when it all first started, it was bare knuckle, or like they just had hand wraps on. But it was so bloody that actually like the TV companies put pressure on them to put gloves on, because actually like it was just looking like absolute bloodbaths.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Like people weren't necessarily getting hurt as much because they get knocked out a bit quicker, but there was so much blood involved that actually they were like, this is just too hard to market.
That's interesting. To be honest, I mean, I've seen some UFC fights recently, and they were pretty bloody. They were pretty like crimson masks, I would say, for like a few of the fighters. It's easy to be like, it seems more brutal, even though that's probably less damaging than actually, getting the however many heavy hits repeated over and over again. But like, there's nothing more kind of striking than like a person's face just like masked in blood. It's quite a visual, isn't it?
It is. It very much is. Right, well, Andy, why don't we wrap up and invite our listeners to tell us their favourite obscure rule?
Please. Or if you want to clarify any of the ones we've spoken about, or some examples of any of the ones we've spoken about, that would be much appreciated also, guys.
Absolutely. And just a little reminder, guys, that we would love for you to vote for us in the British Podcast Awards and make us the people's champion. So if you visit BritishPodcastAwards.com and search for the podcast Boxing Unwrapped, you can click it and add your vote. All you need to do is put your name and email address and say that you want to vote for us, and you will help us be put forward for the Listener's Choice Awards. And we're up against like pretty big podcasts, but like, it'd be nice even just to be mentioned.
We can be a classic underdog story, Ryan.
That would be the beauty, eh? That would be the beauty. But with that in mind, guys, thank you very much for listening, and hope that you enjoyed this episode. So it's goodbye from me, Ryan.
And goodbye from me, Andrew.